Hi, my name is Dr. Alan Barnard. It's a great honor to present at this year's Critical Chain 2025 conference with the theme Delivering More Projects Better, Faster, and at Lower Cost. A key enabler to be able to do that in any project environment is how do you find and focus on the next one thing within that project. That one thing that if you can achieve it, solve it, will allow you to do more projects better, faster, and at lower cost. In my presentation today, I'm going to be covering 5 areas. Firstly, how did I discover the one thing focusing cycle, and how did I validate this approach first in theory and then in practice? And then I'll show you how you can apply the one thing focusing cycle to any project to find that next one thing for you and your team to focus on. I'll end off my presentation sharing how it can be applied to a very complex case study, one of the largest SAP projects ever done, a multi-billion-dollar SAP project called One SAP. And then I'll end off with some lessons learned. So let me start with the origins of the story and insight. In 2024, I'm approached by Jay Abraham with a very ambitious but interesting challenge. Can you present theory of constraints to Tony Robbins' Platinum Group, but do it in one slide? Not many, not few, just one slide that we can hand out as a worksheet. People can take away and they can apply it to their environment. Well, this really got me thinking, and I was wondering how would it be possible to do that? So I did what I thought could be a good approach. I approached some of the top entrepreneurs that I have personal connections with or direct connections with, somebody that is working with them at the moment. And I asked them all the same question. You all are very passionate about the goal and theory of constraints. What was it that you took away from it? In fact, more specifically, what was the one thing that changed everything for you when you read the goal? And very interestingly, they all came back with a similar answer. The one thing that we took away from the goal was that there was always one thing that we should focus on that can make all the difference. So the key insight from the goal was there's always one thing that we should focus on. And of course, this is very similar to the answer that Dr. Goldratt provided when he was given a challenge of explaining all of theory of constraints, not in a page or a few paragraphs or even a sentence, but in one word. He said that theory of constraints can be explained fully by the word focus. And here, focus doesn't just mean knowing what we should change, the one thing, but as importantly, what we should not change, the many other things. So it's going from many, not even to few, but to one. That is what focus requires, is focusing on one thing at a time. But here's the challenge. The insight is so simple, so profound. Why is it such a challenge to find and maintain the focus on the one thing? And then I realized that Dr. Goldratt actually had solved this problem when in the late 1980s he was struggling with the same thing in his own company, trying to develop strategy and tactics to achieve the goal of their company. And what he realized was the conventional way of thinking about strategy and tactics is that it is a one-to-many relationship. There's a strategy that is our go-to-market strategy, and then there are many tactics, which is all the details. He asked the question that only a physicist could answer. If we go back to the original definition of strategy and tactic, where strategy is the objective that you're trying to achieve, the answer to the question, what for? And tactic is the details of how are you going to achieve that strategy. He realized that that is a one-to-one pairing. Strategy and tactic exist always as one-to-one pairs, and they exist at every level. As you go down into deeper and deeper levels, getting more and more details about the how-to, you still have that strategy and tactic pairing. What is the objective that you're trying to achieve? What's the best way to achieve that? You have to keep on forcing that one-to-one relationship. As soon as you go one-to-many, you will lose the focus at every single level in an organization. So that the key is to think in terms of one-to-one pairings. And here's a practical example. You can see the goal of the organization, the one goal is to achieve profitable growth, maybe 10xing their profit from 5 to 50 million in 4 years. And there's two components to achieving that goal to close the gap between our goal, the potential in organization, and our current reality. But when I want more detail and I want to maintain the focus, I convert that change objective into a strategy and tactic. So the key to focusing, maintaining that focus right throughout, is to maintain the one-to-one pairings. So what I did was I took all of this and I put it into one slide. I started off by asking the question, how do we find the one thing to focus on next? And I answered it with a simple statement, also coming from Dr. Goldratt, which said the best solution starts with the right questions. So what is the first pairing that I should think about? Is one goal, one constraint. What is the one goal I'm trying to achieve? Is it an impact goal? Is it an income goal? Is it that I want to do more of something? Or do I have enough, but I just want to do it faster? And then once I've clarified the goal, what is the one constraint that's holding me back from achieving more of that goal or to achieve it faster? Is it that I don't have enough demand or enough capacity or enough supply or enough cash, or maybe I simply don't have enough management attention? What's the one goal and the one constraint? That's my first pairing and question. The second one is, I have one constraint. What is the one problem to solve? There are many problems that could be contributing to me either not exploiting that constraint better or to elevate it. What is the one that if I could solve that will give me a significant reduction in the gap between what I have and what I need to achieve the goal? The third pairing is one problem, one conflict. The problem exists because there's a conflict that we haven't yet resolved with a win-win, that we've made some compromises and that gotten us stuck. So what is the conflict? What is the options I have for solving the problem or dealing with the problem? What's the unique pros and cons of each of those options? That helps me to better understand the problem by understanding the unresolved conflict. And then I go to the next pairing. I now have one conflict that's clear that I have to solve, and I need one innovation to solve it without any trade-offs. Problem solving is finding a solution to a problem. But that solution is always just one side of a conflict between implement the solution versus don't, maintain the status quo, or implement the solution, implement alternative solution. I have to find the innovation that gives me all the pros of the solution and the status quo, or the solution of the alternative, with none of the cons of the solution or the status quo. That is my fourth pairing and question. And then the last part is, I have one innovation, one experiment. What is the one experiment I can go and do to test the innovation? Did it actually solve the problem? And if it solved the problem, did it get me more of the constraint that I was hoping for? And finally, did it actually result in getting more of the goal? And if so, then what is the next problem or the next constraint? So this was my one slide. I'll share with you the details of what I put in each of these boxes, just graphically to show what that looks like. But I wasn't yet convinced. I wanted to see, is there any evidence of this one thing focusing cycle? Because it combines the 5 focusing steps with the thinking processes. Is there any evidence that I could pick up from Dr. Goldratt's own writing? So I thought, well, that's a big task. Maybe I can use ChatGPT to help. And what I specified as a prompt was I explained these 5 one-to-one pairings to ChatGPT and ask it to please read the goal and see if it could identify any evidence of a one thing focusing cycle that was being used by Alex Rogo. And if it could identify more than one, which we would expect, because during the story of the goal, the constraint moved from internal, where they just didn't have enough capacity to meet the demands. Orders were starting to run late. Lead times were growing exponentially. Due date performance was crashing down. Was there evidence that they also applied the one thing focusing cycle after the constraint have moved? To my absolute astonishment, within just minutes, ChatGPT identified 6 cycles throughout the book, and it explained it beautifully. Here was the one goal. The first goal was get that customer order out the door as quickly as we can, because the customer's jumping up and down and the boss got very, very upset. What was the one constraint? It was that NCX10 machine. What was the one problem? Well, there was a breakdown and we had to fix the breakdown, but there was a conflict. I'm going to have to work overtime to make up for the breakdown, And at the same time, there's also pressure to not authorize overtime because it is currently being prohibited by a corporate policy due to the fact that the plant is unprofitable. How did Alex resolve that conflict with a win-win? He said, I'm just going to do it and I'll find some way to absorb that cost somewhere else. It was a real innovation then, because if he didn't resolve that conflict, he wouldn't have solved that problem that they had, and that wouldn't have given them enough capacity on the constraint to meet the goal, which was to ship the order out by the next day. And so it continued. As I mentioned, it found 6 cycles. I've included these in the slides for those that might be curious to see how good ChatGPT was to analyze this. I did the same for It's Not Luck. And then I moved on to Critical Chain. And again, same prompt, gave ChatGPT Critical Chain to read and say, can you find as many one thing focusing cycles in Critical Chain? The only thing that I reminded ChatGPT of, because it's not an obvious thing and it doesn't typically exist within our current body of knowledge, so it wouldn't have been trained on this, I told ChatGPT that there are 2 types of constraints. One is a flow rate constraint. We don't have enough capacity or demand or supply or cash to meet a specific goal. But there could also be a flow time constraint. We have enough demand and capacity and supply and cash, but we are not doing it fast enough. And I mentioned that in a project environment, specifically the storyline here, the constraint might be a flow time constraint, which means it's the longest path of dependent events after we considered capacity. Goldratt called that critical chain, so I reminded it that the constraint might be the critical chain, but after that it would be the same. What is the one problem that is causing the critical chain to be longer than the time we have remaining or the time the project needs to be completed in? What is the one conflict that have blocked us from solving that problem that's causing those avoidable delays? What's the one innovation that can help us resolve the conflict without any trade-offs? And finally, what is the one experiment? How did they go and test it? So again, it found multiple cycles, and that to me was validation that in fact, this one thing focusing cycle has always been there. I just discovered it with the challenge of, can we present all the theory of constraints, both the 5 focusing steps and how the thinking processes relate to that, and the various solutions of TOC all in one slide. And then my final test was, I gave ChatGPT all the information about past projects that I've worked on, all the interviews I did with stakeholders, all the presentations I did, even video presentations, and the results that we achieved. And again, it consistently could easily pick up the answers to these questions. What was the one goal? What was the constraint? What was the problem? What was the conflict that had to be resolved? What was the innovation that resolved that conflict without trade-offs? And what was the experiment that we went and tried? I tested it with projects that I done in logistics, in healthcare, in manufacturing, even in non-profits and NGOs like Habitat for Humanity. So let me show you what was the additional details I put into each of those boxes when I explained it to Tony Robbins Platinum Group. I said, you have one goal, one constraint. That goal, to achieve it, means work has to be done. That work follows a certain process. In this case, we have to do A, B, C, D, E. The goal tells me how much resources I need to complete each of those steps. And then I can map it against what I have as resources to complete each of those steps. And the one that I don't have enough of to achieve the goal, that is my one constraint. So in this case, it would be process C and the resources that is required to operate process C. Let's call them resources C. That is my one constraint. Now I'm ready to go to the next pairing, which is one constraint, one problem. There's a gap between what I need and what I have. What we know from 80/20 is that even though there could be multiple independent causes or problems that explain that gap, 80/20 always applies. But excitingly, it also applies in a fractal way. So 20% of 20%, which is 4%, will give me 80% of 80%, which is 64%. So typically 4 causes could explain 64% of the gap. And then I can apply it again, which is 20% of the 4, which is about 1, will give me or explain 20% of the 64, which is 51% of that gap. And that is my one problem. So even though there are many problems, and there could be few that contribute most, there's always one that will contribute at least 50% of the gap. And that is what I'm looking for. So this is true, that graph is true if it's a flow rate constraint. So I need 10, I only have 5. I need to find out how to go from 5 to 10. If the constraint is a flow time constraint or critical chain, then just inverse the need and the have here. Because what I then have is I need to complete it in 5 years, for example, but currently it's going to take 10 years and I need to find out what's causing avoidable delays, or I need to complete it in 50 days. My critical chain is currently 100 days long. What are the problems that explain all the avoidable delays, and which one, if I could solve it, will give me the biggest reduction in that? So that's the second pairing. The next pairing is one problem, one conflict. There's a solution to solving the problem. There's always a solution to solve the problem. But there's also pressure to not use that solution, but maybe to keep on following the status quo, or maybe an alternative solution. And that's the one conflict I'm facing. The problem triggers a solution, but there's a conflict between using the solution, making that change, or not making that change, following the status quo. Each of these options I have, the solution and the status quo, have got unique pros, but they also have unique cons. And now I get stuck. If I go for the solution, it means that I have to give up the pros of the status quo and live with the cons of the solution. That means it's not a really viable option. At the same time, if I stick to the status quo, I'm giving up all the pros of the solution and I have to keep living with the cons of the no change. That's also not a viable option. So that results in me having to go to the next step, which is I have one conflict now. What is the one innovation that can give me all the pros of the solution and allow me to keep the pros of the status quo without any of the cons of the change or the status quo? That is what I'm looking for. And for those that have followed my work, you'll recognize this as my Procon Cloud method. And in the Procon Cloud method, in step 3, we have a specific procedure that will give you 4 options for this innovation, all with more pros and less cons than whichever the option is that you're considering at the moment, either the solution or the status quo or an alternative. And then we get to the final step in this process, which is one innovation, one experiment. I need a way of testing this innovation. The only way to test it is either in a virtual way with a digital twin, for example. So let me check, if I implemented this innovation, will the problem be solved? And if the problem is solved, will I be able to get more of that constraint? And if I did get more of that constraint, will it help me to achieve more of the goal? If I don't have the luxury of doing it in a digital world, then I have to do a proof of concept pilot. I call this not a minimally viable product, but a minimally viable experiment. What is the simplest, fastest experiment I can do to get fast feedback so I can see what's the next step? Did I solve the problem? If so, what's the next problem, or maybe what's the next constraint? So 2 things here from this diagram I want to leave you with. The one is that problem solving is finding a solution to a problem. Innovation is finding a solution to a problem without trade-offs, without it triggering resistance to change. That is why that innovation step is so critical. And the last part is, when it comes to innovation, we have to test it first. The key is to think about testing that innovation as an experiment so we can get fast feedback. So this diagram for me is really about how to focus on the one thing, number one. Secondly, how to finish it quickly, get fast feedback by achieving the flow. And that is what triggers this continuous improvement. So let me switch over to a practical case study. A few years ago, I was invited to come and assist with one of the largest SAP projects that had ever been done. It was a multi-billion-dollar implementation of SAP spanning 4 years, 5 releases. The cost of a day delay, we calculated, was $1 million a day. Over 1,000 SAP consultants were involved. But it's not just that the loss was the cost of having all these resources for more days if it had delays. It was also that the company would lose out from the benefits of why SAP was implemented, and that was estimated to be around $5 million per day of lost benefits if the project took longer than expected. It was happening over 60 countries. They started working on a project, but unfortunately in release 2 there was a crisis. There was a number of delays that took place, and very quickly it looked like the project was going to be about 6 months behind schedule. This was not an option. Failure was not an option here, and the project team started looking around for solutions. And what they found out was that one of their business units, the iron ore mining side, had already found a solution. They were using CCPM and using Concerto to implement CCPM, and that allowed them to actually catch up on the 6 months. So they implemented the solution. It was very successful with release 2. When release 3 started, though, they were back in a challenge. They managed to put it through. They managed to deliver release 3 almost on time. But then by the time release 4 came in, there was slippage again. 50% of the task had become red. They needed to find some way of recovering between 2 to 3 months, else the project was going to be late. The head of this project team, the planning team for OneSAP, was one of my past students, and he contacted me and asked me, Alan, we are using CCPM, they tell me, we're using Concerto, but I'm seeing a lot of evidence that maybe we're not properly using it. We don't know why. Could you come in and do a best practice audit assessment? Since they were using Concerto, I asked Sanjeev Gupta, CEO of Realization, to join me on this assessment, and that is what we did. The mission was very clear for this 5-day initial assessment, was get clarity on the project status. How bad is it really? Is this project really going to be 2 to 3 months late if there's no significant intervention? And we quickly validated that yes, from Concerto it was showing at least a 2 to 3 month delay on the planned go live. The next question was, what were the main causes? And from the few discussions we had over the phone before we started the audit, we quickly realized that everybody had their own opinions. There were many, many things that were being blamed for it. People were finger pointing to each other. The company was finger pointing to the implementation partner. The implementation partner was finger pointing to the software. There was a lot of finger pointing. There were many, many things. We not only had to find a few, but the one thing that they could immediately do, and then the next one thing and the next one thing. That was what we wanted to find from the recommended fixes, is the simple fixes that can put this company back on track. So what was the approach that we followed? The one goal was clear: go live on time and within budget. The one constraint was also clear. Unfortunately, the critical chain that was remaining was it was longer than the remaining duration before the go live, about 2 to 3 months. The one problem, that is where, okay, how do we go from many problems, not just to few, but to one at a time? And we decided to do both a qualitative analysis, to do interviews with all the stakeholders, and then try to analyze the interview data using 80/20 to identify the main causes of delays, but to also do a quantitative analysis. Luckily, there was quite a bit of information inside of Concerto and other systems on when delays happened, what was ultimately the causes of delays, and we also had access to our own project digital twin that we could read in the project plans, do a simulation of the past to try and identify from the simulation what was some of the main causes. So that was our dual approach. So going back, step one goal, one constraint, that was pretty clear: go live on time, on budget. The constraint was the critical chain was longer than the time left. So what was the one problem? Was that there was avoidable delays on that critical chain, and through both the qualitative and quantitative analysis, we identified 5 main causes of the delays that were avoidable delays. And we proposed that these things be addressed one by one. The first one was the unsynchronized priorities, because for whatever reason, they had stopped considering capacity constraints when they were pipelining, and they were releasing way too much work. Also, the task managers were not great at controlling that, and that meant that often there was pressure to start tasks without full kits. There was pressure to multitask at all levels. We also identified that the reporting was not always accurate and sometimes delayed. When issues did come up, they didn't escalate it. So we knew these 5 causes had to be addressed. The next question was, well, why haven't they addressed them so far? And from that, we identified what was the 5 main conflicts of, on the one side, for example, always follow the CCPM priorities as it is in Concerto, versus allow people not to do that and take local considerations to decide what should be the priority. As I mentioned in the explanation of the One Thing Focusing Cycle, the solution was clear. but the solution was not viable because somehow the stakeholders believed they would have to give up the pros of the status quo or live with the cons of the solution. So clarifying this and actually drawing out the pro-con cloud and finding out what was it that they didn't want to compromise on, and seeing if we could find a true innovation was the key to resolving each of these 5 conflicts and therefore solving each of the 5 problems. So that was our 5 innovations. Always ask for and follow the buffer priorities. But we added 2 components to that, which is the first component is what do we need to add to that solution so we don't give up what was perceived to be unique pros of the status quo, which is sometimes considering local elements in deciding the priority or the release schedule. And also what was the fear of the cons of always following the buffer priorities. What did we need to add to that solution? So we had 5 innovations for these 5 conflicts, and we felt confident that if we implemented these 5 innovations one by one, it will reduce the avoidable delays on that project flow time on a critical chain, and that would make them more predictable, allow them to do shorter sub-projects, do it with better quality, lower cost, lower risk, and also, by the way, lower stress for all the people. So then we went on, and we didn't just stop there. We said, now we have this innovation, but we have to make it very, very clear. So we started looking at how we can define each of these key elements. What do we mean by priority? What priority should be followed versus not? What do we mean by full kitting? What do we mean by multitasking? I realized that there was quite a lot of confusion in multitasking, even though we played the multitasking game and everybody got it, that if you multitask, everything takes longer, you get much less done, your quality suffers. There was one of the women that was leading the solution architect team, which was the kind of the bottleneck on the whole project. And she said to me, Dr. Barnard, if you expect us to stop multitasking, it's a no-go. I will not sign off to that. I asked her to explain why that was so hard. So what was the compromise that she felt she has to keep making, or what she would have to give up on if they switched over to single tasking? And what I realized was we had actually never properly defined multitasking. Multitasking is not doing multiple tasks at the same time. We can't. We have a cognitive bottleneck. It's also not just switching cost. So we defined multitasking is the following. Multitasking is when I switch from the highest priority task to a lower priority task when I could have continued making progress on the highest priority task. So there's no good or bad multitasking. The only reason why I should switch tasks is, one, if the priority changes, and secondly, if I can't make any further progress on the highest priority task. So this was very helpful. We defined also what is an issue, when should it be escalated, what is a task, and what is a task list, and what is a checklist. So just to zoom into that part, we also defined very clearly what the position and the role was for each of the stakeholders, what was their responsibility in terms of following priority, always making sure there's full kit, not multitasking, solving issues quickly, and reporting progress. And then for each of these, we identified a performance metric and a compliance metric. Were they complying to these new 5 rules that we agreed upon? So the last step was doing the experiments and testing this. So instead of launching a big change initiative, we proposed a series of experiments that we can get fast feedback on. And it started with just testing the first solution. What if we aligned all the priorities tomorrow and we measure compliance to those priorities? We explained why it would work, and then we start measuring what's the percentage of red tasks. It was about 50%. Do we start seeing a reduction in the percentage of red tasks when we start creating better flow? If it works, we move to the next one, which is implementing the full kitting side. And what happened? Well, through the combination of the focusing, getting the flow, getting the fast feedback, we had a measurable impact. Compliance to CCP and best practices started increasing and soon got to close to 100%. We started seeing a percentage reduction in the red tasks. We started seeing sub-projects starting to be delivered on time and even early. And when it was early, often there was no real benefit to deliver it early in terms of go live. So we just used that additional time for additional user training. And finally, the project actually went live on the planned date, on budget. It was actually pretty anticlimactic since no major issues reported. Going live across 60 countries all on the same day. Just imagine that. So, a summary of the innovations here. We designed 5 solution elements and the metrics that corresponded to that. We then did training. We were given only 2 hours of training time with over 1,250 team members, most of those from the SAP implementation partner. And essentially, once we got this insight, we designed the 2-hour training models in a very simple way. What is the goal of that specific function, whether you're a project manager or portfolio manager or task manager or resource manager? What are the common mistakes that are made there that are causing avoidable delays? What is the innovation that's required? And how can Concerto help to implement that innovation? And then what it will be the performance and the compliance metrics. So that's what we delivered in these chunks of 2-hour training time. We use Concerto to measure compliance and performance. And lastly, focused on building the habit of doing the right one thing now. Just do them one by one. I am including a full summary of this full analysis in terms of the one thing focusing cycles in your slides, so you can go through that when you have time. And lastly, the lessons learned. The power of the one thing is that there's always many goals, many constraints, many problems, many conflicts, many innovations. Even if I go from many to few to one goal, then the next challenge is, okay, now there's again many constraints to achieving that or few. How can I find the one? And then I go from one constraint to many problems. I keep on having to enforce that one-to-one pairing. That is the way to get the focus, the flow, the fast feedback we need to achieve continuous improvement. Here's the warning. Avoid the one-to-many trap. Identify the one-to-one pairings to solve them in sequence, learn through control experiments. And then the final message was a key thing for me. We delivered the project on time, and the project owner took me for a celebration dinner. And I asked him a question that had been on my mind for some time. I said, you know, when we presented, myself and Sanjeev presented this solution that you're essentially going to have to re-implement CCPM and Concerto right in the middle of everything. I said, it took a lot of courage for you to make that decision to say, let's go. Why did you make that decision? Was it something that I or Sanjeev said? What was it? And he said to me, Alan, there was in fact one thing. You said to me that your lesson is that we don't learn from experience, we learn from experiments. And you said, all I'm suggesting is just do one experiment. Let's try the first thing, aligning priorities, and focus only on that for a couple of weeks and see if it makes a difference. And he said that made all the difference. You didn't ask us to implement a new change initiative or program. You asked us to do one experiment. And he said that is how he sold it to his team. And there was no resistance to change. And he said that is probably one of the most valuable lessons. And I realized it is one of the most valuable lessons, is to treat every decision, every improvement as an experiment to learn from. Don't launch changes, launch experiments. Don't think minimally viable product, think minimally viable experiments. And focus on solving just one thing at a time. Thank you so much for your attention. We'll open it up now for a Q&A.